Hey everybody, I'm going to read a very short version of this story. I won't read all the words, but I'm going to explain the second half of the book to you. The second half of this story talks about the girl finishing her quilt, but it also talks about the civil rights era and other things that have happened in her grandmother's life while she's living at Gee's Bend in Alabama. So this page is called Progress. The township where they live, the county where they live, decided to build a dam for electricity because that's progress, that's improving things. But unfortunately, all the people that lived there farmed the land. That was their income, and it was a very small income, but that's all that they had, and it was wonderful soil. Well, as soon as the dam was built, the river backed up and flooded all of their farmland. So all of their income is gone. But now there's more electricity for the township or for the county. It's not really progress when it affected so many people's lives. This page, she just talks about all the different colors and how different colors have feelings. On this page, she talks about how her cousin comes to visit. Her cousin is from New York City and thinks that she's just a country girl. And her cousin, who has a laptop, is surprised to find out, oh, what, you guys have internet here? She thought they had nothing. And that really offended her. And she was really excited when her cousin went home. This story is called Pinky. This man named Mr. Willie Quill, who's from Gee's Bend, he trained horses for the Alabama State Police. So they have horses, right? Well, back in the 1960s, there was a march for voting rights. And it was led by John Lewis, who just passed away somewhat recently. And he was marching with John Lewis, and the governor said, you're not allowed to march, but the people marched anyway, because they believed the black people should have the right to vote. Well, as soon as they got to the top of the bridge, the police started attacking them. But amazingly, this man, Mr. Willie Quill, knew the horses that the troopers were on because he trained them. One of the horses was named Pinky, and he yelled out the horse's name, and the trooper that was about to attack him, the trooper's horse went the other direction. And it saved his life, the fact that he knew the horse's name. This talks about how the little girl, her grandma, went to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak in his church. And she did a lot of marching with him. He was very important to her. This story is called The Right to Vote, and it's pretty crazy. Gee's Bend is surrounded on all three sides by the river. And if you want to vote, you have to register to vote in advance, and you have to do that in a city called Camden, which is the biggest city that's nearby. To get there, you have to get on a boat that takes you across the river. It's called the ferry, and it's like a 20-minute ride across the river. Well, as soon as the county found out all of these black people were registering to vote from this place called Gee's Bend, you know what they did? They closed the ferry. So that if the people in Gee's Bend want to vote, they have to go on a 50-mile trip by car to get to the place instead of the 20-minute trip. 50 miles back then would take like at least 2 hours or longer. If you had a car, not everybody had a car. Really messed up way of preventing black people to vote. But this girl's grandmother said, I would have crawled to vote if I had to. Nothing stopped her from voting. This talks about how the school in her town shut down. And so all the black children in her town had to get on a bus and drive 50 miles to school where there was a lot of white children. As soon as the black children from her town started going to school with the white kids' parents pulled them out of school and put them in private school. This just tells a story of a pastor and a woman who was a housewife who came down to Alabama in that area to march with Dr. Martin Luther King. Because they believed in civil rights. They believed everybody should have the right to vote. And then they were both killed. And Dr. Martin Luther King was killed. This talks about how the people started wanting to pay money for the quilts. But they told the quilt makers you had to do your design in a certain way. And the little girl's grandma said, I want to do my own designs, so I don't want the money. But the grandma loved it. Sometimes she would be able to sew with corduroy, which is a nice thick fabric, and she loved that. And this is all the women working together. This is the little girl's finished quilt and all the women working together to finish it. And here's a picture of the little girl and her grandma wrapped up in a blanket, and the grandma is so proud of her, and everybody's very happy that she finished her quilt. The end.